So Aline, I'd like to share my experience with African blue basil. That's one of the ones that you can propagate from cuttings. I wanted to start off first of all by showing you what the beautiful African blue basil looks like. Laura asked that question.
Ooh.
Isn't this just gorgeous? And you can see, so these are what they look like right now at the nursery. And they have those beautiful big blue spurs that come off of them. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that the cutting that you take for propagation is green. You don't want anything woody. And you put it in water. And then when you see the little things come out from the bottom, then you plant it. Well, you might kill mint. I'm just kind of nursing along this little African blue basil. I had about 2 or 3 of them, and you can see this one little leaf hanging on. But what I'm going to be able to do with this new plant that I have is take new cuttings from that. But this came in from the outside in September, so I have kept it alive since September. And if I shake my hands too much right now and this leaf falls off, I'm going to be very sad. But I've got a new plant to go with it, so it's tried and true. So that's my African blue basil experience, but it's become my favorite basil. So I think this is where Aline wants to hear if anybody else has things to share about their experiences with propagation. And Amy, I turned people's video off. Be aware now that since we're on gallery view, all of you are showing up on the video. So if you weren't right in front of your cameras, I turned off your video. And we can turn it back on if you'd like to. Yeah, Rima, you should be able to ask your question. Go ahead, girl.
I have Pride of Barbados, and I took the seeds and soaked them for 2 weeks. And after that, in a warm, dark space with plastic over it, I took them and put them into a pot. And about 2 weeks later, I got little baby plants.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That is wonderful. I have a question for you, Rima. Which Pride of Barbados did you use? Did you use the natural one that is orange with like a yellow center, or did you use one of the hybrids that are yellow with a pink center?
No, I found it as I was walking, the orange one. I took the seeds.
Yes.
And I took those and I soaked them. Some didn't come up, but some did.
I know what you're talking about. I've got the seed pods. They're very easy to grab a hold of.
Yes.
Near Deep Eddy Pool, particularly, there are several beautiful Pride of Barbados plants that I have harvested the seed pods from and kept. Now it's too late now. I've had them for several years, although be an interesting experiment to see what happens. Thank you, Rima. That's a great idea. So you just soaked them for, you said 2 weeks you soaked them for?
Yes, and I put a plastic bag over them in a little warm water, and then I took them and put them into some potting soil. And then I waited and waited. I gave a little water, and then some sprouts came up in some of them.
That is wonderful. And
And
they're
I
a fast
planted.
grower too.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to try mine. I'm going to go look out in the garage in my old refrigerator that I use as a seed storage bin, pull out a few of those pods and see what happens. Thank you, Rima.
I like hearing how many of us Austin Herb Society members are thieves as we wander around the neighborhood and find a seed pod or something that we like. It's okay, right? As long as we don't jump a fence to go get it, that works, right, Laura?
Right.
I've had a lot of success with just taking a small cutting, like you said, in the greenwood of various things, and just put a little rooting hormone on them. Some people say you don't need to do that, but I find it helps them. And then just make a hole with a pencil and stick it right in the dirt. And a lot of times, I mean, it won't be 100%. That's why whenever I do that, I do 5 or 6 and maybe get 1 or 2 plants from it. But it's so easy that, you know, if you don't succeed, you haven't lost a lot.
It's cheap too.
Yeah, really.
What are some of the things, Sylvia, that you've tried that with? What others that we haven't mentioned have you had luck with?
Well, I haven't tried it with too many herbs. Right now, I do have a rosemary plant that I'm growing from one of those cuttings that just stuck in. But a lot of times in the fall, I'll take in one of this or one of that, especially like coleus. Coleus is so easy. And I'll take several cuttings and do that in small pots and then carry them through the winter so I don't have to buy new ones the next spring. And that's begonias are very easy to do that with too.
That's great.
And I've had a couple of roses, and that's how I did them successfully, is just rooting hormone, stick them in. I think with roses, probably the secret is to do it at just the right time. And I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's early spring.
I think there's also a problem. I used to grow hybrid tea roses, and I don't think you have very good luck trying to take cuttings from those. And maybe it depends on where on the plant you do it. But as far as the heirloom roses and maybe the knockout roses, you know, all of those should
I have propagated knockout.
Good.
And I found one. I asked the person because it was in a very obvious spot, and I didn't want to take any cuttings without or deface the plant in any way. And I planted about 6 cuttings of this. I don't know the name of it, and he didn't either. Huge pink blooms.
Ooh.
And one of them is just it's going crazy, and it has wonderful blooms and fragrance right outside my sunroom door, but I don't know what kind of rose it is, but it's beautiful.
You know, maybe we should do as an idea for future presentations, we should have something like you did, Sylvia, where you brought us and showed us an example, and you, Karen, showed us your blue basil. I call it half French and half English sometimes, that we could all enjoy even while we're doing this virtually to see. Like, I'd love to see an example of your beautiful pink rose that you're showing, you know? Have you got one?
And it's really weird because it bloomed just about a month ago. It's gone now, but it made a bloom when you wouldn't expect it.
With climate change, we're finding a lot of things are happening that we never thought were possible. Like all of this basil that was supposedly only perennial in one area, now a lot of them are basically perennial. They managed to make it through. I've got some still growing outside. They don't look pretty, but they're alive.
You know, Aline, two other comments and questions came in. Somebody asked whether or not the basil was edible. I'd be curious about whether any of the herbs that you propagated had a different taste. And then Rima also asked whether or not geraniums could be propagated.
Okay.
No, actually she said geranium is easy. So maybe we should ask her about that. So I'm throwing 2 questions at you. One, how did your basil taste? And then we'll go to Rima to let her tell us about propagating geranium.
I haven't noticed any difference in the taste, which would make sense since what you've got is a clone of the original plant. Although I have heard of something that if you keep doing the same clone over and over again, it kind of loses some of its viability, but I haven't had that happen. And certainly rosemary tastes the same. It has a very distinctive flavor. No, I haven't noticed any difference in the flavor or the viability of what I have rooted and planted. And back to you, Rima, for the information about the geraniums you said.
Yes, I was able to propagate them from a cutting. I cut a little piece before the joint and then wrapped them in a little plastic bag. And then I got a little root and I had new geranium plants.
Wonderful. That's great. And you know, that reminds me, one of the ways that I germinate seeds, there are several ways, but what I found is particularly with those grocery store seeds from either the squash or the melons or whatever, I do what Rima has done, and I imagine a lot of us have experimented this. I take a damp paper towel and put those seeds in a paper towel, put it in a plastic Ziploc bag, and put it where there's some sunlight, you know, just indirect light near a window or whatever. And my germination rate on those seeds is really good. That helps a lot.
Jan has a question about what is your soil mix, Aline, in your wading pools? And I've been to Aline's garden, and that wading pool setup is so wonderful. Everything is waist high. There's no bending. You will never look at a child's wading pool again the same way. So Aline, tell us about your soil mix that you've got in there.
Well, I try not to use anything that's got like Miracle Grow or fertilizer in it, but I get it basically from Lowe's or Home Depot. It's their own brand. Is it Stay Green, I think, is the Lowe's brand. It's just the big bags of potting and gardening soil. I combine the two because it's cheaper that way. But I'll just fill up those pools with a bag of the garden soil for vegetables, and then I'll put in some potting soil mix, and I'll stir it all up with my hands, and you can get down into your elbows at that level, and stir it up with some bone and blood meal and some vermiculite if I feel that it's too, compacted. But I don't use anything that's like separate. Some people do a 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3, with peat moss and vermiculite and whatever, some other kind of soil. My friend Kathy does that, and she has really good luck with her garden. But I don't like having to do all that myself. So it's basically just store bought, but hopefully more organic and not with any kind of crystalline kind of fertilizer in there.
And Lucinda shared something about Hoya. Do you want to talk about rooting your Hoya, Lucinda?
Yes, my son has a vine. It's called Hoya. It's tropical, and I took a piece of it home with me from Wisconsin, stuck it in some water, and it rooted. And it grows very vigorously. If you like things like that in the house, you need to have something to let it grow on, because it'll kind of go like crazy. But it roots very easily in water. I think the thing about rooting in water is not to leave your cuttings too long in the water, to get them into the soil as soon as you can. That's what I learned about water rooting.
Thanks.
Another thing I've had a lot of success with is any sort of succulents, but I don't put them in water. I just put them right in the soil that has, either rocky or sandy base. And it seems like you can't do anything wrong. You just take a cutting and stick it in that base and they grow. Almost any kind of succulent.
Karen, may I ask a question of you? Have you turned off the recording, or are we still recording all of our stuff?
We are still recording because I think this is good questions, but I was actually going to say we're coming to the end. So if anybody has any last questions, we can wrap it up.
Oh, let me show you my fig plant that I grew from a cutting.
Good.
Yes, and Laura's saying that she hopes we can tour each other's gardens in future meetings. Yes, we really do miss that, Laura. We usually have the members garden tour, and we've been talking about doing that virtually. There have been times when we're in the middle of a call like this, somebody just takes their phone. I think Kate Alsabrook did it one time. He just walked outside and took her on the tour of the garden. So one of the things we were thinking about is like, look at Sylvia. Sylvia's just taking us on a Zoom tour of her garden. So take it away, Sylvia, you're up.
Well, I was just showing my fig plant. It's a fiddle leaf fig that I grew from a cutting that was probably about 12 inches. And now it's like 6 feet. A neighbor gave me a cutting, and she gave me 2, and one of them was successful. I mean, I planted them both, but one of them grew.
That's great. Well, this has been a good call. I'm going to throw it over to Lucinda to thank our speaker and take us all home.
Well, we're very happy that everyone came today. we hope that you learned something from this presentation and you will recommend it to friends. They'll be able to see it through a link on our website. And the Boston Herb Society mission is to educate ourselves and the public about plants, about how to plant them and how to use them. And so for any information about our group, you can go to our website, www.bostonherbsociety.org. There's a membership form online if you would like to become a member. And there's tours of the garden, there are recipes, there's all kinds of resources on there. So visit our website, and we hope to see you at a live meeting whenever we're able to do that.